when people say techno-utopian, we're right to be skeptical of people who are uncritical about anything.
Right.
But I think there's also a kind of embarrassment,
right.
a deep-seated feeling we have that there's something naive or unsophisticated about being idealistic.
Sure.
And I don't believe that for a minute.
It's almost
to me, if you're
hipper to be skeptical,
a little ironic,
sure.
a little cool, a little detached.
Yeah.
That's never been the thing that's resonated with me. I understand life's ironies. That said, if you're not idealistic, if you don't have the highest hopes possible, what are you waiting for? What are you saving it for? You know.
But Carr does spell out some compelling arguments, such as the fact that the web kind of encourages, I think it was you were saying, a kind of obsession with newness, a kind of endless, kind of the buzz of discovery, and then you basically become a shallow learner and you don't deeply engage with anything. What do you guys think?
I think that's absolutely right, but there's another side to it which Carr seems not to understand or be willing to celebrate, which is like any amplifier, or what Marshall McLuhan would call an extension. The possibility is it can play to the absolute worst, basest, most superficial aspects of who we are, or it can be a platform for that idealism I've been discussing to actually take a real shape in ways that we couldn't possibly have predicted. And it's natural for people who feel many of the things they valued shifting or changing to be very alarmed about that.
Yes.
I'm alarmed about it too. However, to go to another author, Stephen Johnson, who's also very optimistic about not what the internet will do, but what the internet could do. He starts his new book, Where Good Ideas Come From, with a quotation from A Midsummer Night's Dream about the poet giving to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. And what I do is map that onto the internet and the power of creativity and communication. It is undeniably unleashed. I think of the stuff that is just staggeringly creative. The Symphony of Science, Kudiman's musical experiments on YouTube, the work Michael Wesch has done on the anthropology of YouTube that shows this unexpected depth and connection that's possible in that medium.
Well,
and to me, Nick Carr's cautions are well taken, but it's an incomplete picture. I think actually Shirky gives a more well-rounded picture, though he's obviously optimistic.
You also mentioned in your talk Lanier, Jared Lanier, right?
Yep, you are not a gadget.
You are not a gadget, and so you were just mentioning how there are these incredible examples of explosive creativity in the web. And Lanier, one of his key arguments is that you've seen how far we've gotten, and all we have is Wikipedia, and he mentions a couple other banal examples of Web 2.0, and he says the future's not here yet, right? Ardent protector, defender of this notion of digital humanism. Let me ask you about one of his arguments is that nobody's made any money, like authors don't make any money from Web 2.0. Okay, like even this video is unlikely to produce any revenue for TechZombie. There are other forms of revenue, non-monetary, that we can hope to gain, right? But not money, necessarily. What do you think about that, either one?
Well, if you look at the transition into print, a technology that came online in the late 15th century, you see massive confusion. Who will be reading this? Why will they be reading it?
Right.
How are we going to make this pay? Whole classes of occupations were gone overnight. Scribes? We don't need them anymore. We have a machine to do this. What we need are more people to produce paper, more people to produce, the lead molds that you cast. So my answer is this: no one knows during the disruptive period how it's going to shake out. That's what it means to be in a disruptive period.
Sure.
And again, Lanier's cautions are often well-founded. The problem is drawing firm conclusions about dismal outcomes in the middle of the disruptive phase is a classic mistake.
Okay.
It's why Western Union was not interested in the telephone. Right?
Highly
famous example.
Yeah, highly unlikely to yield good results when you're in the middle of chaos and you're trying to predict where is it headed. Apple has figured this out before other ones have. They're the ones who came out with a 99-cent
the first ones
music.
to monetize music.
Right. They figured out, no one else knew it, no one else did it, they went out and they did it, and that's what's going to happen here in all these areas is someone's going to figure it out, and then they go.
That actually leads to my next question. Did you guys read the article in Wired just came out. It's called The Web is Dead.
Yes.
By Chris Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, so, and in that it's co-authored by Michael Wolff, who's the author of The Man Who Owns the News, which is the biopic of Rupert Murdoch. And he writes half of the article, and Michael Wolff's argument is that finally, after this kind of period of disruption, this 15-year period in the web, now finally it's actually being organized again, where these conglomerates, these powerful media companies are taking control of the web again.
I mean, Steve Jobs' vision really is of a kind of end-to-end user paradise, courtesy of Apple, where you trust your digital future to Apple because you can't imagine anybody doing it better. And Apple does it well, depending on what it is. So I'm not a huge fan of the Apple model of how to monetize this. At the same time, Apple's not going to kill the web because they're not going to close down the web, and there will always be ways people find to use the web, creative ways that actually make e-commerce possible.
And if the article that you're referring to is one I'm thinking of, I think we reviewed that article, my staff and I, because it's a pretty powerful statement. And we looked at it, and our interpretation of this is, the way it's being described is, the web and the internet were described as something different in this. And it basically was that apps certainly aren't dead, but looking through a browser to get content and so on, that's not seeming to be the way people want to consume content. The way they want to consume it is embedded, and you've got your apps and you bring it up. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of our universities now looking at how do we present information to our students, to our faculty, to our staff with mobile devices, and none of it is about browser-based. It's all app-based that we're talking about, because the platform benefits from the way it can be formatted and in the usefulness of it. So apps, from my viewpoint, are a clear direction, and we're actually moving some of our strategy then based on away from World Wide Web interfaces to apps-based interfaces.
You know, apps do not equal Apple, and I think we've seen in the rise of the way Google's Android operating system and the Android smartphones have really pretty. Now we'll see what happens once the iPhone goes to Verizon, which we know that's happening, sometime in the next year. But I guess my point is this: apps too can be a publishing platform. I'm not wed to the idea of the browser. I enjoy the idea of the browser, but sure, that's going to evolve. I just want to make sure that we always have an open system to publish within. Apple's not interested in that. What they do is useful. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's okay. They have their right to do their business model, but they don't have a right to try to do vendor lock-in on publishing on the internet.
We have an initiative underway on our campus right now that is actually going to be starting up on Tuesday with an event that we're hosting called Digital Future. And we have a keynoter coming in, a well-known keynoter, Richard Katz, formerly vice president with EDUCAUSE. And we are going to attempt to look out 15 years into the future, looking at trends for how to position ourselves. And I think rather than looking at specifics, there are a couple of things that we're going to do. We're going to look at megatrends right now that are in play, because they clearly are going to impact us, and we need to know about it. Our entire community needs to know that these trends are not going away, that they are here permanently. And so we're going to be going over that. We'll be talking about teaching and learning, and the future of teaching and learning, the future of research, and then the future of services. There are some, you can maybe go out, the Horizon Report is a good example. You can go out 3, 4, up to about 5 years. Boy, after that, it's hard to imagine what is going to be developing, because as part of our exercise, we're looking back 15 years. 15 years ago, there wasn't a Google, right? So how do you imagine this when these things weren't there? And the pace is going to likely be exponentially faster the next 15 than the last 15.
We don't really know what U.S. culture will be like once we have pretty much ubiquitous, genuine broadband penetration. I'm not talking about 6 megabits a second. I'm talking, what about when we have 100 megabits a second?
Everywhere.
To 80% of the residences in the United States. That's a huge game changer. Absolutely, because now not only does everything come through the same pipe, but let's say we actually have symmetrical speeds. Upload is the same as download. Now participation in real-time, 3D, telepresence, virtual environments becomes something that you can do with the computer in your pocket and a really robust. It's very exciting stuff. And when this happens, people will be innovating within this space. And when they innovate, I'm not sure what form the innovation will take, but I know it will be highly complex, it will be immersive, it will probably be haptic, because we're discovering that motion, touch, these are important dimensions of the computing experience. The other thing I think is going to happen if higher education steps up is that we will see even more people becoming publishers on the web or on the internet or the app or whatever it's going to be as a normal and natural part of teaching and learning. When that begins to happen, we're going to see some very interesting things because the learners are going to be linking to and reading each other. And when that happens, a lot of other things are going to happen, and I hope that day is sooner rather than later.
There'll be entire new billionaires that crop up because they have found something that everyone wants, and other things that we're taking for granted will cease to exist. They will not have innovated fast enough to survive. One point I wanted to make to build on what Gardner was saying is about the broadband is this stimulus package that we had in this country is setting the foundation for that future 15 years from now. A tremendous amount of public money has been invested in this country's infrastructure, and it's going to have a huge impact. You combine that public expenditure with some of the private expenditures that are going to take place to get the last mile into homes and so on, and we are going to really have made a huge advance within the next 5 years of broadband in this country. Other countries are doing this. Actually, they've been ahead of us.
And we've been falling behind.
Right.
But you think about iTunes. Could you do iTunes if you were all using, 9,600 kilobit a second dial-up? Absolutely it does.
Yeah.
And there will be a day, and it probably will be just a few years from now, where my saying 100 megabits a second to the house will sound like 640K of RAM. It will be laughable.
Right.
People will be getting 10 gigabits a second to the house, and they'll be getting it wirelessly. They'll be walking around with devices in their pockets that will be able to take advantage of that kind of connectivity. That's exciting.
As an example of that, I mean, Facebook effect in 2000, as recently as 2005, you could only have one profile picture on Facebook. You had to switch.
Yeah.
And now Facebook is the repository of digital images.
Well, and that's another thing, and people don't remark on this very much, but I know as a CIO, Bruce, this has been something that he has welcomed. The cost of storage is absurdly cheap. You can throw hard disk space, even solid state disk space, at issues of archiving, at issues of user customization that would not have been even, you couldn't have dreamed of it 10 years ago.
Right. Unimaginable.
Yeah, completely unimaginable.